Chapter 18. A Cocktail the Colour of Blood. The do that followed the conference was planned to be a big celebration. Mr. Devlin said to me, "If the conference is to be a success, we've got to look to the wider context, and what that means is what we in management call networking. You won't fully understand this, Ted, but it's a question of where we are and where we're going, and that is what management is about. We've got to think to the future." My eyes must have glazed over, because he laughed and said, "Ha, no point throwing pearls before swine. Can see you haven't got a bloody clue about what I'm talking about, Ted. Not a bloody clue. Suppose you must get a bit envious of those of us involved in the decision-making end of affairs here. And in a word, Ted, I want to make this conference memorable, both locally and nationally. You get me?" I wondered why he kept making these speeches to the likes of me if he was so important. "Memorable," I said. "Memorable, Ted. Memorable. To the family of man gathered here." I suppose memorable is what he got, but it was nothing to do with anything he'd put into place. First of all, I noticed Delroy, the ex-chair of the meeting, making his way over to Claudia with a cocktail the colour of blood and sprouting fruit and sticks and umbrellas like a tropical beach. "Yeah," he said, "a drink to the future of our people and a compliment to a terrific bit of arguing. You got it, sister. You got talent, all right? Ever thought of joining Black Jihad? You might get somewhere. Career in politics up here? Oh, and half apology for the anti-Tom remark, but I could not resist it. It just came to me." Leroy butted in. "You one arrogant prick, Delroy. Me, I don't know how you get away with it. I don't know how they blasted shit you manage it, man. You're using the Babylon situation for your own purposes, man, which make you a kind of Babylon yourself, see?" "I do, but it not bother me, man," said Delroy, and wandered across to his mates, who were sitting together in a group near the bar. They were guzzling cocktails like they had just been invented. No shortage of money in this revolutionary politics business, I thought to myself. Jellyman, who had declared a state of general enjoyment, was holed up against the bar with a very content-looking Mr. Devlin. I wandered over to eavesdrop. I knew what Liverpool needed was a forum for the kind of 100% successful conference we've had here today. I mean, have you ever seen so many, I don't want to be patronising here, but coloured people, what I mean is black people, in the same building, let alone the same room? I mean, he did that thing with his fingers to emphasise the word black. "I have actually," said Jellyman. What?" said Mr. D. "Seen so many coloured people, as you first called them, but then went on to use the word black in the same building, let alone the same room. The question, that's what you asked, yeah? If I'd ever seen so many, what you said." "Oh, really?" said Mr. D, looking miffed. "Yeah, in my club, for instance, in other clubs, for instance, in political meetings, for instance, in community groups, for instance, in places of work where we can get jobs. That being one of the big problems in this city, I can tell you. And in pubs, for instance, pal. Sorry to spoil your day." "Oh, but you haven't. I mean, it's still been a success, hasn't it? I mean..." "Well, I suppose so, given the two of your speakers, namely Leroy Thompson and Claudia McPherson, are big mates of mine. Big meaning big, and mates meaning friends. Understand? And terrific performances from both, although I found Leroy's likening of the world to a dartboard a bit difficult to take. I like a game of darts myself, and I watch it avidly when it comes on the box. In fact, I watched the World Championship the other week. What? You mean when the little fat Scotch bastard beat the other fat Scottish bastard? The one who beat the middle-sized other fat Scottish bastard in the semi-final? Said Jellyman. If you like, said Mr. D. I do, said Jellyman. And in the great spirit of regeneration, what this conference is all about, I've only got one question for you, good self. What's yours? Said Mr. D, nodding to Jellyman's drink. Just a bit of friggin' quintuple brandy and orange, mate. None of that poncy fresh juice stuff. I mean the sticky stuff from the big bottle, okay? Mr. D saw me and nodded to the bar, handing me Jellyman's half-pint glass to fill with brandy and orange. We're talking gratitude here, pal, said Jellyman when I handed him the drink. Any entertainment comes free, okay? He finished the drink in one go. I suppose you better fill that one up again, seeing as everything's on the house, he said, nodding across to Mr. D, who was now talking to some of the Black Jihad lot and laughing his head off. Mr. D nodded, so I filled Jellyman's glass for him. That'll be £4.60 something, I remember thinking. How's business, cutie pie? The person asking the question was none other than Nancy, Claudia's great friend and ally of ours in the initial trickery that saw off Mr. D. Funny, I was thinking that Mr. D hadn't been trying on with Claudia these days. Suppose he's not really that kind of person anymore. Now he considers himself a part of the regeneration of the city, or something like that. Now he runs conferences for the black community. Wouldn't be right, him looking to be doing things with Claudia anymore. Wouldn't be right to going around feeling the breasts of one of his black speakers, would it? Claudia said I should come over and have a bit of a chat with you, because you were looking lonely. Said you needed a bit of company, that you needed to be drawn out your shell. Said a bit of female companionship wouldn't do you any harm. Bit of feminine warmth, bit of art, you know, said Nancy. Well, I said, I'm just giving Jellyman his drink. You give that fat greedy bastard his drink and get back over here, all right, lover? But Jellyman heard what was said. Oh, the bloody hell do you know I was illegitimate, Nancy, my sweet? And what's wrong with being greedy? It's great when it's free. Free pop all night is not to be sniffed at, girl. You're still a fat git, she said, laughing. I have to confess that when she started laughing, I felt kind of funny inside. Down below, in the intimate area, there it was. When she laughed, her whole body moved with her, not just her face and mouth. I suppose those people who know a bit about these things would say it was arousing. The way that her body moved affected the animal instinct part of the human organism of my body. As I handed the drink to Jellyman, he said, Look at that ponce over there, the shower of con men. Referring, of course, to Mr. D, who was still laughing his head off, but now had his arm around the shoulder of Delroy, the ex-chair of the meeting. Another thing, said Jellyman. For your own sake, son, do everything you can to keep that woman, okay? Nancy, I mean. It'll be worth it. Pity she didn't think I needed a medicine. Medicine, I was thinking. Do everything she says? Anyway, I went back across to the bar where Nancy was sitting on a high stool. She was wearing a black dress that was designed to give you a minor heart attack rather than cover her body. First, it was very short, like above the knee. Second, it was low across the top, which meant a lovely gap between the breasts was visible, and I could almost look down the front of her dress. She had on a pair of black shoes with heels that could have extracted winkles from their tiny shells, and bright red lipstick and gold earrings. And when the warrior returns to his homeland, He is given a welcome that a king would envy. What? I said. Oh, just talking about the Vikings, about the Greeks, or anyone really when they go to war. Like you know. I haven't been to war. I'm not a warrior, although I do like to study the Greeks. Oh, yes, you are. Now, sweetheart, how are you then? When's your birthday? All right. 15th of May, I said, not really knowing what she was getting at. That'll do fine for me. See what I mean? She said. Now, come here and tell me about these friggin' Greeks that you're supposed to be studying. Tell me about the way they used to, how they got on with each other. Like between man and wife, or boyfriend and girlfriend, and all that. Okay? I don't really know much about that. More the political history, really. But there's bits and pieces in Herodotus, and nothing in Thucydides, and they're the two main historians. The Romans were worse, though, I think. I think we should just spend a bit more time together. Talk about this kind of thing. Explore the issues a bit. Play around with the themes. Discover the living reality of it all. You know what I mean? And she gave me a look that would have melted cobalt. And I have to confess that my down below was in a real mess. All kinds of funny feelings going on down there. I might be needed here. Gotta serve the bar at this do, I said. Listen, I'll sort it all out. Wait here, okay? What you need is a prescription of Nancy's special medicine. Medicine? It's what Jellyman was talking about, I was thinking, as she made her way across to Claudia. I saw her whisper and then nod across at me, and of course I was forced to nod back. Claudia then wandered over to Mr. D and whispered something in his ear. Claudia could twist him around her little finger. Old enemies make good friends, someone once said, I think. Anyway, Mr. D looked across and nodded at me, so I nodded again. Nancy walked back across the floor. As she did so, I heard Delroy, the ex-chair of the meeting, say, "Oh, God in heaven, where did she come from? That specimen of sexual dynamite. She walks in beauty like the night. I'd give my right hand." Nancy walked across the floor. Claudia said, "Listen, she's got a fella. And I think your right hand isn't worth 40 seconds of our time, pal. I think you need to keep that part of your body for your own purposes, which I hear you enjoy." "Eh, what? What you getting at, girl? But please, don't tell me she's with that Cecil over there. The one with the funny ears," said Delroy. "If you mean Ted, the answer's yes," said Claudia. By this time, Nancy was back at the bar. I was wondering about my big ears and must have been touching them because Nancy said, "Hey, don't fall for that one, Ted, love. Delroy's been doing the big ears trick for bloody years. Must be thousands of poor fellas in Liverpool, eh? Think they've got saucers on the side of their heads." She smiled at me and gave one of my ears a very gentle touch. My back tingled. "Listen," she said, "it's a bit stuffy in here. Why don't we find a little room and have a bit of a private drink together?" "Well, I don't know," I said to Claudia. "Oh, well, I don't know," I said. "Listen, it's all sorted out. Claudia will do any work behind the bar or on reception, and it's been okayed by Mr. Devlin himself. Cheeky bastard. Said he'd do anything to promote good relations with the black community. Says on the night of such triumph, he'd be delighted to help out. But I reckon we've got the whole bloody lot of them jealous, you know that?" She said. "Well, come on, lover," she said, taking my hand in hers. What could I do? I'm walking out of the room with this woman, and to tell the truth I feel a bit funny, embarrassed like, and I turn my head to look around me. I got a real shock then. Every single person in the room, male and female, was looking at us as we went out. I was an object of total attention. I was famous. There was just one thing that got me, though. In the far corner of the room, I spotted a familiar sight. Dressed in his military uniform he was, and staring at Nancy like she was a mesmerist in a bloody music hall. Old Harry. The evil old bastard had turned up after all, and looked ready for action. "Thought you were going to give me a hand later," shouted Jellyman, laughing to himself. "Slight draft here, lover. Let's find that cosy little room and have our little chat," she said, turning to me. "Did you see old Harry?" I said. "Listen, Ted, he's harmless. Big gob, nothing else. Wouldn't hurt. He would, you know. He's got a gun. A real live piece of military hardware. Something that can make holes in people. I wouldn't be surprised if he had it on him. That's what I'm worried about. I just don't trust him." "Talking of which," said Nancy, "let's find this bloody room." "I mean, it was him that was sending those horrible letters. You know the ones. Claudia showed you them. Now he's sending the bloody things to Mr. Devlin here. Devlin got a letter from him today, believe it or not." "You mean that pathetic, sex-starved geriatric has got that kind of poison in his brain? And there was me thinking he was just short of his share. Don't worry about him, love. He's nothing, trying to become something." "Oh no, he's like a giant boil, that fella," I said, "full of pus and disease." At this point we were on the first floor of the Eagle, still within hearing distance of the hubbub below, yet now we were completely alone. Nancy turned the handle of room 124 and it opened. As nightman, I knew of course that room wasn't booked for any purpose, so we wandered in. "Look what I've got," said Nancy, pulling out a bottle from her handbag. "Best vodka on the market. Made in Russia. Stolnitya is real gen. And I've got other stuff." She pulled out a cardboard box of tomato juice. "Before we get into any funny business, let's get pissed on Bloody Marys. Does that sound like a first step to paradise? Or what does it sound like? You tell me." "I'm not really sure. I didn't know what to do. I lit the gas fire for something to get busy with." "You was going to tell me about the way the Greeks make love, gorgeous. You was going to tell me about bedrooms soaked in perfumes and rose petals, strewn on divans, and little slave girls running around with lotions and bunches of grapes to throw down fellas' gobs and things like that, weren't you?" Nancy had poured me a drink. I slugged it down in one and coughed as it hit my throat, and decided to pursue the theme. "Actually, I think that Greek family life was more or less like ours, only that women didn't really have any power and didn't get involved in anything serious, like." "Oh, that's a big surprise. Haven't times changed?" "I mean, maybe this is going off the point a bit, but the Athenian leader, Pericles, he once had a very famous relationship with a woman called Aspasia. And once Pericles' policies came under a bit of criticism, she was given a right going over, because she'd actually tried to get involved in public life and politics. She'd even started a kind of club for artists and intellectuals. My kind of woman. But she was eventually put on trial for impiety." "Oh, even more my kind of woman." "Mind you," I said, "Spartan women were a different breed altogether. Their job was breeding warriors and making sure their stock was up to scratch. No invalids in Sparta, you know. Started the kids off on the training schedule from 2 years onwards. There was a story about the mother of one of the kings of Sparta. She was asked why they seemed to be the only women that could handle men, and she said they were the only women who gave birth to men." "Aha! Said Nancy, as she downed her drink and poured me another stiff one. I didn't know whether she was bored or not. Then she came over to where I was sitting and sat at the floor by my feet She leant her head across my knees and looked into my eyes. But what I'd love to know is, lover, what they, got up to. She gave me a smile, and my heart was pounding while my down below seemed to be pumping liquids all over the place. Did the Greeks do this? Said Nancy. And as she said it, she leaned across to my face and licked my nose, my eyelids, and my chin. Did she do this? She said, stroking the inside of my ear, and then all around the lobe with her little finger on her right hand. Then that part of my body started tingling. Oh, this? She stood up and walked around. She blew warm breath on the back of my neck and massaged my shoulders. More tingling. Heart, down below, ears, neck. What was this medicine? At this point the door opened, and who walks in but Alf Speed, accompanied by my beloved mother, and of course the ever-present ale-swilling fat bastard Tommy. Got invited to the do, didn't we? Said Alf. There wasn't any nudity involved, but embarrassment's basically embarrassing, especially when your face is as hot as one of Leroy's Jamaican chilies. The guard's down, and you're feeling like you've let yourself be seen in your true light. My legal female parent, bloody Alf and bloody Tommy as well. The whole bunch of them were finding me like this. And what about Alf and Tommy? Were they going to nip into bed for a quick kip, I was thinking. Which was just what I felt like. Nancy was leaning back, grinning her head off and pointing her finger at me as if to say, naughty boy. She'd sneaked over to the chair she'd been sitting in earlier, before she had decided to operate at closer range. And we couldn't refuse, said Tommy, nodding down at the pint glass I'd only just noticed was in his hand. I glanced at Alf. Sure enough, there was the pint of draft Guinness. With my mother, I thought? Well, she wasn't carrying a glass, but she had a large plate with a cloth over it. I had a slight inkling. What's your favourite? She said. Steak and kidney pie, love. Why don't you and your friend here tuck in now? Have you had your tea? Have you had your tea, love? She was looking at Nancy. I'm not really into eating at times like this, if you get me. Before, unless the Greeks did it like. Nancy said, winking at my mother, laughing. Oh, sorry, said my mother. Hope I haven't interrupted anything. I mean, it was my opportunity to clear up the embarrassment. We were talking about the ancient Greeks, Mother, about family life in Athens and Sparta. Oh, pull the other one. It's got bells on. Not exactly dressed for school, is she? Said my mother, looking at Nancy. But it's true, I said. I could feel a kind of pleading in my voice. Actually, said Nancy, I was just about to seduce that delicious son of yours. Well, now I can believe that. Anyway, I'll leave the steak and kidney. You might need some nourishment after. You finished, the two of yous. Talking about the ancient Greeks. Oh, that's a bloody good one. Pull the other one, it's got bells on, son. Come on, lads, let's leave nature to take its course. Looks like someone's going to get some of God's own medicine, Half. She put the pie on the small table by the side of the bed and made her way to the door, followed by the two men. Don't forget that pie, she said, nodding towards it. Fresh baked, that is, girl. What was this medicine stuff people kept going on about? Oh, by the way, said Alf, turning to me. He called me over with his index finger, like a primary school teacher. Give her one for me, he whispered, and do everything the doctor orders, okay? He gave me a friendly jab in the ribs and winked at me as he left. I was still wondering what all this medicine and doctor business was about Was Nancy actually medically qualified? I wondered. Once they'd left us alone again, it was back to action, particularly in the drinks department. Nancy brought over another stiff one for me, sat herself down at my feet again, and rested her head on my thighs. I could feel her breasts as she breathed, as they moved against my leg. My down below started giving me jip, as people sometimes say about parts of their body. "Well then," said Nancy, "despite the disbelief of the maternal relative there, lover, we were conducting a little personal seminar into the erotic customs of the ancient Greeks." "Yeah, but I feel a bit woozy. The vodka and all that. You've been giving me stiff ones all evening." "Well, I was hoping you were going to return the compliment, darling." "But I didn't bring any vodka with me," I said. She started laughing, and laughing, and laughing. She was literally falling on the floor with it. And I could see, unfortunately, right down the front of her dress, and it was seriously affecting my down below region. "Oh God, you don't know what you're like. How sweet you are, dear. God, what a change to be with someone like you, instead of these hairy-assed, macho know-it-alls. We're bloody useless anyway. Listen," she said, "I am totally convinced that the one thing we've got in common with the ancient Greeks and Romans, and any other bloody nation you care to mention, is that we find certain things a lot more comfortable in bed." "Well," I said, I'm not exactly tired." "No, but you soon will be," said Nancy. She stood up and went over to the gas fire. "I'm going to turn this off, because I like to feel nice and cosy, knowing that it's colder outside than in, if you get my meaning." She was looking deep into my eyes at that point. Then she smiled and turned to face me. She put her hand behind her back and pulled down the zip of her dress. She eased her shoulders out, then let the dress fall. She had very little on underneath. Her breasts, the first I had seen in this way in my whole life, seemed to be pointing at me. She just stood there, smiling. Her red panties and black stockings were the kind you see on those pictures of women in the certain kinds of magazines. I never knew real women wore those kinds of things. For me, this was all new. But most of all, I was completely bewildered by the terrible things my body was doing to me. My heart, my lungs, my head, my down below. "Oh God," I remember saying, "what's happening?" Nancy took off what remained of her clothing and stood in front of me, completely naked except for the earrings she was now removing. I have seen Greek and Roman statues of the unclothed female form, but Nancy's skin was more wonderful in its golden brown colour than any marble I could imagine. "You poor bugger," she said. "You need assistance and advice. And the first order from Dr. Nancy, get your clothes off and follow me into bed." What could I do? And I have to say that getting my clothes off wasn't as easy as I thought, given the surprising state of my certain parts of my down below. But when I felt Nancy clasp me as I got into bed, it was like everything wonderful that children might understand, when they have dollops of ice cream, or when they get glorious toys for Christmas. "This will be joy unbounded," she said. "You are now Julius Caesar, and I am Cleopatra. Or you are Alexander, and I am Roxana, and our love will shake empires. Ha ha." "Where did you learn this stuff?" I said. "I've been doing my researches, haven't I? Oh, Ted, you look like you've just swallowed a ripe Jamaican chili. You don't know how it's going to get. Listen, let me soothe your body and your mind first. I'm going to blow across your skin until you feel you're on the point of sleep. Whatever you do, you've got to relax with me and follow everything I say. Remember, I'm the doctor."